And now a special message for our teenage listeners. Don't kill Brian Cox's dog. He'll make you regret it. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and yes, actually, don't kill Brian Cox's dog, and maybe you shouldn't kill anyone's dog, because you're an idiot if you do, but especially don't kill Brian Cox's dog. Today we have Red in the screening series. It was a great flick that premiered at the 2008 Sundance Film Festival, and of course we have screenwriter Stephen Susco with us. Now, I guess it wouldn't be a podcast for the summer of 2008 if there wasn't a very special sound error, so today's special sound problem was that our main device failed. I don't know what to tell you. It just failed. So, it's okay. We still have our backup device getting room tone. And I know it's going to sound muddied a little for about a minute, but give yourself about 3 minutes, especially if you're listening on headphones. You're gonna get over the kind of inconsistency really fast. And then, honestly, I got to tell you, it's worth putting in that initial 3 minutes to see if you can get used to it, because Susco had a lot of amazing things to say. The path that this film had to go down in a very troubled time for independent film, it was quite the road for Red to reach the screen. So you'll be missing out if you don't tune into this episode. Of course, don't forget to look for Creative Screenwriting Magazine at Barnes & Noble and Borders bookshops in the United States, Canada, the UK, and Western Europe. You could always find out what's in the current issue of Creative Screenwriting Magazine by going to www.creativescreenwriting.com. And of course, if you want to take advantage of our special offer, if you want to subscribe, I think it's $23, type in the discount coupon code CSPodcast to take 10% off your order. It's kind of hard to fail. 6 issues for about $20. That's a great price, and if you dig this podcast, you'll dig every issue of Creative Screenwriting Magazine. But now, without further ado, let's jump right onto the stage in our packed screening of Red right after I introduced screenwriter Stephen Susco.
Just for people in our podcasting audience, this is actually not part 2 of Independent Visions within the studio system. A podcast that Stephen was a part of over a year ago. Yeah. I still have not posted part 2, but we're gonna skip through your breaking in story pretty much. I know so well I can do it in my sleep. We're gonna go with version 76A right now.
Sure.
But yeah, obviously Stephen wrote The Grudge, Ju-On, the American translation of The Grudge, and also Grudge 2. All that info, getting his first agent, first gig, that can all be still found in iTunes in the independent visions in the studio system. I will say this though, something that a lot of people forget about. This I do want to talk about your past before we get to tonight's film. You were an assignment writer for many years, and the writing of the script of The Grudge was your 25th script that you wrote before you were ever produced. Kind of give people a sensibility about what it's like to work as a writer unproduced, because many people think like, oh, you have to have a film come out, that's the only way you're going to get a job. But there's a large portion of people that do a lot of writing, make a great living, and are never produced.
Yeah, I hope there's a large number of people, otherwise it was just me. I got my first job in '96, and The Grudge was produced in 2003. I wrote 25 movies before The Grudge, and it's it's a living. I wrote for a lot of studios and a lot of producers, and I had a variety of movies, from $5 million to like $150 million science fiction extravaganzas, and some were greenlit, and some had flashing green lights, and some had actors, and for one reason or another, the ones that were going fell apart, and the ones that weren't going never picked up momentum. But yeah, there's a lot of writers who can make a fine living and work on a lot of projects, but haven't gotten anything made. So I was certainly happy to have one actually come out.
What happened to your back library, your back catalog, be it after The Grudge was produced? Were a lot of people kind of going and digging up old projects that they were then trying to bring life into?
Actually, I don't know if you guys are going to stick around late, but I've got a bunch of them in the back of my car. I'm selling them for cheap. So, some of them got dusted off, and some are just sort of languishing in studio hell. The Red, actually, I wrote at the same time as The Grudge. So Red, at one point, was a back catalog project, and it just was one that found its legs and got going.
Since we covered The Grudge really great in that last podcast, I got a question for you, and answer it cautiously, or I know, as much as you want. What would you say that you could talk about the difference being between the writing and making of The Grudge 1 versus the writing and making of The Grudge 2?
Thanks, Jeff.
How would you paraphrase that story? I'll lead into it with the fact that what's publicly known is that The Grudge, when it came out, I think it was made for $12.5 million. It grossed over $100 million at the box office, wildly successful. They did it exactly the way they wanted it. Then when they brought back the same team, suddenly, by default, because there was money, so many more producers joined the project, and suddenly there were so many hands in it that I would imagine as a writer it would have been really tough waters to navigate.
Yeah, it was really tough. I mean, the first movie was actually an independent film originally, and I set it up with Roy Lee and Doug Davison and Shintaro Shimasawa, Vertigo, the guys who did The Ring, and Sam Raimi. We had taken it around for a while, and we couldn't get any traction on it until The Ring came out. The Ring did really well, and people kind of realized maybe there's something to this kind of horror, and Sam Raimi was the first guy to see the first Japanese feature, and he right away said, let's do it. But even then, their strategy, he teamed up with a company called Senator Entertainment, which was an American arm of a German company that basically just went abroad with a pamphlet that said, from the creator of Spider-Man, from the producer of The Ring, and people just started writing them checks. So while I was writing the script, before the script was even done, they had raised the entire budget of the film. We were going to make it for, I think, $3.5 million. And they raised probably $4.5. So we were just making it on our own. And then right before we were about to start casting the movie, they said, studios had been asking about it, so we gave it to a bunch of them for the weekend. And then on Monday, they had, I think, 4 or 5 offers. And I went to Columbia because that's Sam Raimi's house. That's where he did Spider-Man. And they got a great distribution deal, and the budget only went up like $5 million. It was actually $9.5, I think they made it for. So it was this completely kind of isolated universe where nobody expected anything. And I wrote the first draft, and then every draft beyond that was just sort of a, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, but it's the same draft. And they were able to really, because it was such a small movie, protect that all the way through production. And then, like you said, yeah, it was successful. So immediately it was a franchise. And the Monday morning after it opened, I got a call and they said, Grudge 2 is green lit, let's go. And we had talked about it a little bit, just sort of within the Sam Raimi camp, and all of a sudden there were meetings with 20 producers, and it was sort of everything that you'd imagine from that point. Instead of there being one draft that we reworked, I wrote like 7 or 8 entirely different versions of the film, with different characters, different storylines, just over about a year and a half. And the final film was sort of a patchwork of 3 different storylines from 3 different scripts. So it was a learning experience to kind of do something in a vacuum and when there were no expectations, and then suddenly to have massive expectations.
The Western musical version was my favorite version of Grudge 2.
I like that one too.
Yeah, I would have done that.
I like the cat song, the one without any English lyrics.
Exactly. How did you stay on? I mean, a lot of times they when there's that many producers and that much hoopla, they generally fire the writer and they.
I was fired.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fired 3 times. I think on that one. I was fired. Yeah, and actually at one point I was secretly rehired by one of the organizations to write a different version to wait in the wings, so that if the other version didn't work, then they would pull out my version. I mean, it was it's an adventure.
I know the answers to all these questions. I just want to see how much you would say publicly.
Now, when you were 10 and a kid locked you in the closet, describe that experience to us tonight.
That one you don't have to tell publicly. Tonight's Film Red is based on the beloved Jack Ketchum novel. How did you first come to this project?
I read the book in early 2003 when it came out in paperback, and it had this great cover. I love horror novels. And it just had the silhouette of a guy holding a bloody axe. And it said, "They killed the wrong man's dog." And I was like, yeah. I just imagined like a crazed, 90-year-old Anthony Hopkins swinging an axe. And it was not at all that. I mean, it was this really quiet, slow burn character drama that just kind of reminded me of Straw Dogs and classic westerns and just stories about justice and where things aren't really answered and they don't wrap everything up in a bow. And I mean, I finished the book and went back to page 1, read it again. And the very next morning, I called the publisher to find out who had the rights. And I tracked it down, and they said, literally 2 weeks ago, the rights were bought by this producer. So I called the producer, and I said, you just bought this book, I have to do this book. And he said, well, we're down the road with a writer-director who've been talking to you for a little while. And I was like, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, coffee, you and me, paint the place. So we met for coffee, and I just kind of hammered him for a couple hours, like begging and pleading to let me do it. And he thought about it over the weekend, and then he said, look, I think you're the guy to write this, but I think you should consider working with the director that I've been talking to. And I said, who is it? And he said, Lucky McKee. And I was like, done. You know, I went to school with Lucky, and we didn't know each other in school, but I mean, May is unbelievable. You know, he's such a fascinating guy. So we just had this meeting, the three of us, and right from the beginning just teamed up and tried to figure out how to make it.
So in those early meetings, obviously, because Lucky writes himself, it was designated that you would be the screenwriter, right? Okay. So then, from that point onward, since this guy had the book, were they able to pay you? Like, how did that deal work in the beginning with you being brought on as a writer? Because at this point, it still was, you know, what's remained an independent film.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where we knew that we weren't going to go into, you know, Warner Brothers and pitch them this summer blockbuster about a, you know, 79-year-old guy who's trying to get revenge for his dog.
As it's being released in the summer here of 2008.
Right, yeah. But not by Warner Brothers. So we knew it was going to be sort of a labor of love. It was going to be a long, intensive process. And Lucky was about to start directing a movie for UA called Woods. And I just sort of said, why don't we make an arrangement? I'll come on board as a producer. I'll develop it as a spec script because I'll co-own the material. That's the only way that I could do it. And we'll see what happens, you know. And I just kind of went off and wrote the script. Actually, I was writing while I was in Tokyo. We were shooting The Grudge, and Lucky was directing The Woods, and then it was about what year is it? 2008. It was, you know, that was 2003. So 5 years later, you know, here we are. It was just a very long, tumultuous ride to get this thing going.
But we haven't even started yet. Because this is a crazy story. I mean, there's really two stories tonight. One is about this book and how you adapted it. The other is about this film fighting and kicking its way to the screen. So I'm gonna stay focused on the book for a second, and we're gonna get to the horror show of bringing this to the screen after that. When you adapted a book, what was your process for adaptation? Did you like outline it first and then kind of know the spine of what you wanted to make filmic, or what was your process?
Well, I've adapted a lot of novels, and this one was the easiest because it was a very short book, and it was probably one of the most elegant economic things I've ever read in my life. The movie was there, you know. I mean, I feel like I can't take credit for anything that truly works in a way because the book is so profoundly good. And I sort of saw my role then as the arbiter of, like, let's not fuck up the book, you know. Just trust the book, trust Jack Ketchum. And so the structure was there. I mean, there were a couple battles that were fought along the way. You know, because Lucky and I worked on it right from the beginning, and there were a couple things about the book that I wanted to change that turned into these multi-year-long struggles. One of which was that in the book they have sex, the reporter and Eve, which always bugged me.
And it was so great to not see it in the film tonight because it has nothing to do with the story almost.
Yeah.
At least not filmically.
Well, I was in trouble for a while because Lucky and I talked about it, and he's like, no, they have to. And I said, let me try it. So I delivered a draft that they didn't have sex, and Lucky emails me, and he's like, I talked to the novelist, and he said, they don't fuck. So it was and actually it's funny because nobody agreed with me at that point. The producers wanted it, and it was one thing that I was right on, I think, and it was shot, and it was in the film literally up until I think 5 days before the film screening for the first time, And they said, let's try taking it out, and they did, and they kept it.
So right before Sundance, they took
Right
it
before
out?
Sundance.
So it was accepted into Sundance with that in there?
I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look, I understand how it works in the book. You know, he loses his dog, he gains love in his life, but for the sake of this movie and his search for justice on that narrative track, that would just be a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt that the strength, that what was so powerful about the book was that, you know, here's a guy who lost everything, and the dog is most representative of his wife, and he's living in the shadow of her memory, and so much of what losing a dog triggers is about her and about the fact that he's now alone, and for him to then kind of turn around and some hottie, it just, I don't know, it felt to me like it always kind of cheapened it a little bit, and I felt like we would really lose people.
What was the other element that you and Lucky would kind of go back and forth on?
He was a Korean war vet, and which really intrigued me because you don't see a lot of movies that involve Korea, and I think that did someone just say Oh, good, I was right. Thank you. Well, you know, there's so many movies about Vietnam, and there's nothing about Korea, and that could be why it's oftentimes called a forgotten war. And I think that when you look at the generations, and you look at the Korean generation, and you look at the Vietnam generation, there's such a dramatic shift that no one's ever really studied cinematically, I don't think. And it just seemed like a good opportunity because so much of the movie is about the different generational differences of doing what's right and the view of, you know, where you draw your line. What does it mean to be honorable? What does it mean to be upright and just? And so it seemed like a good opportunity. But I think at the end of the day, Lucky was right. I think that what I wanted to do was kind of clouding and making more complex something that actually worked better further below the surface.
So did you do a draft that really got into his generation?
Yeah.
Korean War veteran?
Yeah, there was
give us some taste of like what those elements were that you put in there.
Well, there's actually sort of a hint of it left, which is when they try to kill him, and he wakes up in the car, and for a moment you hear gunfire, you hear the sound of war, and there was actually a protracted sequence where he's staggering along the road, and you're seeing flares in the sky, and you're hearing nearby explosions, and we connected him to the Death March in Korea that a lot of American soldiers were involved in, where very few American soldiers actually survived, and we sort of replicated that within the story to sort of set up this fortitude.
So him going to the house from the car wreck would have been his kind of death march.
It brought him right back to that. It sort of tied into what he said in the movie where, you know, the thing I learned about the war is that you fight with whatever you have and you never stop because the moment you do is the moment the world rolls right over you. So, but again, like, you can beat something to death, and I think that Lucky was really astute in sort of saying it's great, but it's not necessary. Let's keep it out.
How long did it take you to write your first draft?
Not very long. I think it took probably a month and a half, but I was also writing the other thing. So, and I did a couple drafts with Lucky, and then it went quiet for like 2 years because Lucky was finishing The Woods. And then actually, at one point, United Artists came out of nowhere and optioned the script. So it wasn't going to be a studio film for a while. It was going to be Lucky's film after The Woods.
What happened to that?
The UA kind of had that shakedown where they sort of fell apart and vanished, and I think it got lost in the whirlpool.
Actually, just a technicality, what did you do to protect yourself during that? Because, you know, a lot of times when people option things, it could put you in danger that could end up in development hell, kind of indefinitely. So did you have like sort of a progress to production deal or a timeline associated?
Well, not really. I mean, because we were all sort of on the same side, just sort of scrapping away. You know, I mean, the producers didn't have financing, and Lucky didn't have a deal, and I didn't have a deal, and it was really just this kind of passion project. You know, Lucky was directing something else, and I was writing a couple other things, and the producers had other movies, and it was just sort of the thing that you do on the side, you know, that you can protect the integrity of, because you're not going to enter crazy development process at a studio. So it was really just this kind of like, you know, protecting the little flower bud and saying, come on, how can we do this? How can we do this? And I'm still sort of amazed that
how did it not get trapped there if they optioned it? Did they just not renew and it was just...
No, UA, you mean?
Yeah.
They gave it back.
Okay.
And
sometimes they don't. I mean, I've seen projects go that way.
Yeah, I mean, we got lucky. I'm guessing it has something to do with Lucky, because they, Lucky was doing the movie for them, and they obviously have a lot of respect for the guy. And I think that it was one of those things where they knew that this was like his dream project, and they weren't just going to sell it off some fire sale. So,
tell me what you're having when you write each day. How long do you write for? What's an average work day like?
Write as much as I can, honestly. I mean, it's changed because I have a kid now, but you know that. But I used to write like 8 or 9 hours a day with a little break. If I'm on a deadline, I'll do that. But now it's like I'll get up at 5 and I'll write until maybe 10 or 11, and that's maybe again in the evening. But that's
5 a.m. Were you always early morning guy?
No, I used to write late at night. I would start at 10 p.m. And write until like 4 in the morning. But my first writing partner as a professional writer was the early morning guy, which I thought was great. I was like, hey, I'll write through the night. I'll email it to you. You'll get it nice and hot. And you can work on it. And he was like, no. We work together. So you get up at 6 in the morning. So but I had to change my schedule around a bit.
Wow. Yeah. What do you do when you get writer's block? Did you get any writer's block on this?
No, I mean, again, the book was so well drawn that it was there was no block here. I like to write a lot of things at once, because then if I get stuck on something, I can just shift onto another project.
Even when you love a book, from everybody that I've interviewed who's done an adaptation, there's always a point at which you have to go away from the root material and you have to be inventive. Kind of talk about those internal struggles that you would have, knowing when to leave Ketchum's novel, by the side of your desk, and kind of do something that was satisfying for you as well.
Oh, you mean different projects?
No.
Oh, within this project?
Yeah, within the narrative.
Well, it's interesting, is he actually, not to just give him all the credit that I kind of want to, because he sort of provided for that too. He wrote so many fantastic things in the description that I started pulling them out into scenes. Like the gun shop, that whole story that the owner says about when he was hunting and he tripped and he blew off his leg. That was from another part of the book, and it was just this really interesting story that when we did the first draft was like, that's a great story, where can we find a home for that? And there were a lot of things in the book that we changed the book by drawing out of internal monologue and actually realizing it within a scene.
In the beginning, somebody wants tomato juice. He gives them a discount on tomato juice for the skunks. Like, what am I missing with all that? Just out of sheer curiosity.
That's country living, baby.
I know, but what does tomato juice do with skunks?
Oh, you don't know this?
No. Not from Kansas. Where are you from, man? I'm from Kansas. We got skunks, man. Hey, skunks now, you're in Silver Lake.
It helps neutralize the odor. That's what you're supposed to do.
If you're sprayed.
Yeah.
So you pour it on yourself, or in this case, the dog.
Yeah, or if you have a fetish. One or the other.
Gotcha. All right. Just wanted to clarify. Openings are always tough. The scene where the teens kill Red, it's just kind of out of nowhere. In this immediate decision for them to do it. I'm not saying it's not believable, but what kind of discussions did you guys have regarding the possibility of giving them more of a drive or a momentum? Like, even if the dog was really snapping at them or something like that. I mean, it's very interesting the way it is, because you could read a lot into it. But I'm just curious, was that something that you guys had discussed?
We had a lot of talks about it, because actually the opening scene of the book was that scene, and we added something because we felt the same thing. I mean, obviously this is a troubled kid who, when in a situation where there's an opportunity, he might take it. I mean, he obviously has boundary issues, and we actually added the beat of the gun oil because we thought that that's a good sort of precipitating moment where just a little correction. It's advice, but to the kid it's a correction, and it attacks something in his ego that kind of starts you on the path towards what he ends up doing. In the book, they just show up and they try to rob him. There's nothing at all. But we also didn't want to make it bigger than I think what it was, which was an encounter that didn't have a reason for its occurrence. It would be too simple, I think, to kind of, like if they bumped their cars in the parking lot, I mean, I always was intrigued by the idea that that's what this kid was. Because I thought it really helped reinforce what I think is truly powerful about the story, which is that at a certain point you're not sure anymore if he's trying to get justice for his dog or if he's trying to save this kid, because this kid reminds him of his son, and he sees this kid ending up in the same place.
It's also interesting that he goes to Tom Sizemore at a certain point when he's already suing him. It's like his second visit there, and it's almost like he's giving him advice, which is a very strange thing to do. I mean, I know that after seeing, the monologue, which we're going to talk about in a second, about, the violence that occurred in his own household from his own out-of-control son, it seemed like another odd moment where he's almost trying to give Sizemore advice about his kids going out of control. Talk about that.
Well, I think it underscores that idea, which is that he sees his son in this kid, and he knows what's going to happen to this kid. I mean, even at the point where he gets the kid to attack him, and what he says to him in that moment, he says, "I just gave you what your father should have given you already, and maybe you'll think about me in red before you let your mean speak out again." So the whole time it's playing out, you're kind of like, it doesn't seem like it's about his dog anymore. Like, it seems like it's about this kid who's in real trouble, and it's that battle that he fights along the way.
I was blown away by the monologue. I mean, I thought it was awesome. It was a showstopper. A couple things about it. Just talk about the fight to keep something like that in the project, and we'll get to the technical fight later. I'm just talking the screenplay stage, and also the fact that you decided almost for an independent film, you made the perfect choice in which you didn't write an extravagant flashback sequence where we show somebody spraying kerosene and we see it. You created a perfect actor's moment, which, it could have been out of a play, and of course, with Brian Cox talking for that long, you don't want to take your eyes off the screen, so why cut away? Talk about the construction of that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew right away that we didn't want to do any flashbacks throughout the entire movie, but we also knew that scene was going to be a challenge, and I was wrong with that scene because I wanted to cut it down.
How long was it on the page?
It was like 12 pages of script.
And how long was the original screenplay?
98.
Wow.
98, yeah. It's a big, 12 pages of monologue. I mean, holy cow. And silly me, I didn't know we were going to get Brian Cox. But it was funny because when the movie got shut down for a while and then they brought in a second director, and he and I started working on it, that was something that we talked about. And he said, "What do you think about this?" Because they hadn't shot it yet. And I said, "I think we should cut it down. It's really long." And he's like, "Yeah, it was Brian Cox." I'm like, "I know, but it's 12 minutes of..." And when we went back to get Brian, once we had the money to finish the movie, his representatives said, "Brian will come back, but there's two things that are very important to him. The first is that the sex scene stays in the movie." And I was like, "Cool." And the second is that the monologue remains untouched. And it's just like, okay. Fine. But I mean, I saw the footage and I felt like an idiot. I mean, it's Brian Cox, and you're right. You watch it and you're riveted, and it goes on for a very long time, and you're just absolutely taken. And that was a real learning experience for me.
It was great.
I don't know if we could have gotten away with it though if it were a studio film. That's the interesting thing.
Probably a condensed version, I'm guessing, but I love it the way it is. Some of the sarcastic journalists I was with at Sundance, they were kind of saying, why didn't he just go to the cops? Like, because there's never that scene at the police station. He's with his lawyer, but he never brings the dog's body into the police station.
There actually was a scene. Yeah, there was a scene where he went to the cops, and there was a scene with the DA, and it was a lot. It was a lot of procedural talking that was a lot like a lot of the other scenes, and it just was dragging. It really dragged. When really all you needed to hear was they can't do anything, and they're not going to do anything, and that was sort of all you needed.
Cool, good answer. Character motivation is always important. What would you say that Avery's character motivation is throughout the movie? I mean, would you say it's the search for justice? Is it revenge? Is it punishment? What do you think that he's searching, or is it kind of like a combo of all this?
I think it's a combo. I mean, I think he doesn't know. I don't even know if he knows at the end what his specific motivation was. And like I said, I think it's what I've always liked about it was that it seemed like it was a marriage of those two issues. I think first it was to get justice, which is a very simple notion. And I remember Jack, he wrote a really interesting sentence in the book. It was like, he said like he's not going to be able to find justice here where he always found it before, under the law and in the common decency afforded from one human being to the other. And it was like the middle of the book. And that's where I think there was that shift, because then you started to say, is it really about that? Is it really about the memory of his wife? Or is it now about this kid that he's met, that he realizes is going down a very dark path that is very similar to his son? And he failed to save, in his mind, he failed to save his son. And maybe now he's trying to save this kid to help the fact that he didn't save his own kid. So, I think it's a lot of different things, and I wouldn't want to be so bold as to say which one I think it is. I think it's, the novelist did a great idea with it, and I think Brian did a good idea of swirling it all together and not leaving you with a definitive answer, one way or the other.
I think it was brilliant to have good old Freddy Krueger burning his store down. That's what Freddy does. Talk about the construction of that, because even for little White House trash, white trash house scene, it still was very tight. It worked. You always kind of got
he was great.
What was going on behind the scenes between these two families of different economic status.
Yeah, it was a little bit more in the book about the McCormick character and how he was buying up a lot of property and building Walmarts and mansions. And, we were originally going to set it in Maine, because Maine, coastal Maine has that feel now where in one area you have families who've lived there for 5 generations back, and then 5, meters down the road there's a new Walmart, and palatial summer homes of ex-presidents, and then another 5 miles down the road it's the sticks again. And McCormick sort of represented that character. And I think the whole idea of economic disparity was always something that we wanted to explore. And again, it was there in the book, this idea of the Dousts, of the family from the other side of the tracks who are, they're lucky that their kid is actually friends with the rich kid's boy, so that when things get hot, they're going to use that. They're going to use that character.
It was great. Kind of, it seemed like a turning point without a doubt, almost the turning point that leads into the third act when he stops the baseball bat from hitting him and gives Danny a beating. Throws him down the street. That was a great moment. To talk about that scene and kind of keeping it again really short and compact rather than going too over the top.
Yeah, I felt like he did a really good job with that one. It's a tough scene to pull off. Yeah, there's a believability factor, obviously, soldier or no soldier. And I think what's interesting about it is it's, Abe is a pretty measured guy, and a pretty smart guy, and to me, it's the first time that you go, wow, that was a big mistake, man, because he seems to think that's the end of the movie. He thinks that's it, that's the climax. This kid's going to learn his lesson and is going to be a better kid.
The people clap tonight.
Yeah. It's funny. I think every screening we've had, people clap, but he was underestimated, and then things really turn. So like you said, it's the tipping point. It's when things really get bad.
It's also a tonal shift where it kind of goes from I'm going to try to do the right thing to I'm going to kind of take this into my own hands.
And make it look like I did the right thing.
Yeah. Talk about that tonal shift, because it definitely gets violence. There were some people that didn't expect there to be a gunfight at the end. With kids getting killed.
Yeah. It's interesting because every step of the way, even in that scene, his ultimate goal for hitting that kid isn't necessarily, again, to get revenge for the dog. It's to set the kid straight. So in a way, the whole sequence is about him trying to help the kid. And if you follow every one of his actions all the way up to the end of the movie, when the kid shoots him in the ear, he could have popped the kid right then and there, and he's going to take him into town after asking for a dish towel. And then when the car gets run off the road, he comes back just to get his dog's body again. And it's not until they finally just open fire on him that he shoots back. And even then, it's with some reluctance. And unfortunately, he doesn't miss. It's the father who shoots one of his own sons accidentally. So that was something that really blew me away in the book. That when you meet this character, you don't know anything about him, and you're waiting for him to snap. And in a way, he really never does. He never really crosses that line. But even then, he'll never forgive himself.
It's interesting to consider what they were planning to do with him, because, you could hear Sizemore off camera saying after the car wreck, go hit him just like we talked about. Did they think that they had really killed him, or were they just leaving him by the side of the road to figure out what to do with him later?
No, it's hard to hear, but it's...
Because he says go hit him, and it's clear that he's awake and conscious.
He basically tells his son to finish him off. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty creepy.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. What was the toughest scene that you had to write? The one that you kept coming back to and really refining over and over again?
The opening scene.
Okay.
The opening sequence. Because it's one of those where it's filled at a certain point. It becomes filled with such latent kind of malevolence. You know, the more they're having this weird dialogue about fish and, you know, I don't want fast food, you just kind of, it all happened very quickly in the book, and we just kind of said, let's really drag this out, you know, let's make it a very innocuous, beautiful setting, and it just really starts to get weird, and you're going, why is this kid doing this? What does he want? And that was tough, because it was, you know, it's to stretch that out and figure out the right balancing act of who's saying what and what they really mean behind their words and how it's being shot was kind of a difficult orchestration.
I mean, it also had a great stranger than fiction feel, you know, like Life Stranger Than Fiction, because it wasn't like they were tweakers after drug money.
Yeah.
That would have been the cheesy cliche that you would have seen like in a Law and Order or something like that. They didn't really know why they were doing it. I mean, I love the way that worked. Now getting into, of course, high drama, it's really hard to make a movie. It's really hard to make a movie. Let's talk about this movie, which boasts the name of 2 directors on it. Obviously, Lucky started on it. What was the budget for it?
I think it was done for 2.
For $2 million.
Yeah.
So how hard was it to get the funding once you had your script done, Lucky ready to go, Brian Cox cast? I'm guessing also helped raise that money. Talk about the path that this movie went on as it fell apart.
Yeah, I kind of vanished from the process for about a year, the Grudge 2 year. So I don't know if Brian came first or the money came first, but it was actually Norman Dreyfuss who, this is complicated, Lucky's, the director's agent's father was the financier. I think he had been involved in financing Brick, which they've done pretty well with.
Great film.
Yeah, great film. And they wanted to do another one, and we had been trying for a long time to get this going, and I think Norman was a huge fan of it. I think it was a concert of him and some other friends of his who put up all the money. So it was truly, truly independent. I mean, it wasn't foreign pre-sales with distributors. It was people writing checks, and just an unbelievably tight budget and tight shooting schedule. Everyone sort of hoping for the best.
Now, it originally started with a younger journalist. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Who was that?
I think Angela Bettis, who I never saw any of the footage, but I'm pretty sure that Lucky cast her. She's in a lot of his movies, and I think she's probably, gosh, I don't know, 29. I don't know. She's definitely younger than Kim.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, so what happened as the movie started rolling? Like, how long was it going with her in that role before there were first signs of trouble, per se? I'm not even assigning blame to it. Just that's what happens in independent cinema.
Yeah, I wasn't around for a lot of it. They were shooting in the fall of 2006, and actually, I went to the set. The one time I went to the set, I showed up and Lucky was on cloud 9. I think they've been shooting for a couple weeks, and he was thrilled. He's so excited about the movie, and he was showing me little clips, and they were shooting a scene with Brian, and it was like just being in the man's presence was amazing. And I went home on this high, like, finally, after all this time, our dream project is getting made. And then the next morning, I got a phone call, and they said, they pulled the plug on the movie.
They just stopped it.
They pulled the plug, and I was like, what's going on? What happened? And the veil came down, that black curtain that writers can't sometimes get through. And all I knew was that there were high-level discussions going on about the movie, and there were problems with the budget, and there were problems here and there, and differences of opinion. I mean, all the rigmarole, we've all heard it. And about 6 or 7 months went by, and I think the middle...
So you had to release your crew, you had to release the actors.
They released everybody.
Oh my God.
Everybody.
A lot of movies don't actually make it back after
Oh,
something like that.
no. I mean, this was dead, DED, like dead movie. And in fact, I think Lucky gave an interview online, and people were like, "Hey, how's Red?" He's like, "Red's dead." Next question. So I was staying as far away from it as possible. I mean, I hadn't talked to Lucky for, I think, a couple of years actually before I walked on the set. So I was staying out of it. And then 6 months later, I got a call saying there's a new director on board, he's another client, and he really wants to work closely with you to figure out how to save this movie. So
I mean, I guess it's at least good that again they didn't replace you as the writer in all this, that you
yeah,
to stay the writer.
Yeah. Well, I actually, Lucky had reworked the script right before they started shooting. He sort of produced his own version of it, which was basically the book. I had done these changes, and Lucky just loved the book and said the book's perfect, it's fine. Stop fucking it up.
So you didn't want any invention?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was
like pure stuff.
It was basically the book. Yeah, it was bang on. And so when Tripa, the new director, came in, he and I spent about a week and a half looking at Lucky's script, looking at my script, looking at how much money we had, how many shooting days we had, looking at the footage, as much footage as they wanted to use. They wouldn't let me see some of the footage. And it was I've never done anything like that. I mean, it was literally sort of rebuilding a film from within, being given certain parameters, like we have these many locations, we have these many shooting days.
How many shooting days did you have left?
I think it was like 9 or 11 or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they started the film in California, they finished the film in Baltimore. I mean, it was like, because the investors lived in Baltimore, and I think they wanted to stand there on the sidelines like this. Like right on the edge of the set. So he and I just kind of rebuilt it. And it was nice because then it gave an opportunity to explore, because they'd obviously put the sex scene back in, and I said to the director, what do you think about the sex scene? And he's like, I don't know about the sex scene. What do you think about the sex scene? And then the whole monologue thing. So it gave us an opportunity to and the stuff with the war, which he confirmed what Lucky said, which is we don't need it. You're wrong. Shut up. And then we got all the pieces back. We got Brian, and a lot of the actors came back, and because I think Treat was shot at least half, if not like 60% of the finished film within that less than 2 week shooting structure. So he saved the movie. I mean, again, the movie was dead. And Tripa, you saw his series Torpedo.
I haven't. I want to see it.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't. I want to see it.
Tripa is a Norwegian director, but he studied at USC. He's the nicest guy, and he shoots like, you guys see The Shield?
Yeah.
That's his style. This guy made an amazing 4-hour miniseries called Torpedo for Norwegian television. It's all handheld, visceral, kinetic, but not like showy. It's just you're really there. And he completely had to change his shooting style so that it wouldn't look schizophrenic. It wouldn't look like, okay, this is Lucky shooting. Oh, no, this is Tripa shooting.
Yeah, it feels like one movie. I mean,
yeah,
they pulled it off.
Yeah, I really credit Tripa for being able to do that. That's an extraordinarily difficult task.
So did film insurance ever kick in during all this?
Film insurance.
Hey, seriously, that's what you get, right?
Yeah. I mean, but a lot of it wasn't insured. I mean, when you're operating on this kind of budget, I think there were certain actors who they couldn't bond.
I wondered what that would be. Tom Sizemore, I would think. Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. It was when they were shooting the movie that I saw a promo for the TV show Shooting Sizemore, which was a show about, let's watch Sizemore kick drugs. And I don't know. I mean, all I know is that the guy was fucking amazing.
He was great in the movie.
He was fantastic.
But that could have probably not been the easy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I think that, again, even up to the point where they're producing the film, they were taking flyers on a lot of things just because the resources weren't there, and it was just this we're just hoping on passion. We're just trusting the fates on this one.
In that reconstruction, is there anything that you remember specifically having to change or rewrite, kind of as an 11th hour thing as you guys went back into the final days of shooting?
Yeah, I mean, Tripa obviously had a lot of great ideas of his own. We aged up the reporter. So
you reshot all that.
We reshot all of that. With Kim Dickens from Deadwood came in and was fantastic, and it was a completely different kind of role. As someone I think maybe 10 years older on the script page. So a different level of maturity, a different way of speaking, a different way of sort of relating with Abe and then Tripa had his own ideas. I mean, one of the things he did that I thought was fantastic was in the final scene when Carrie shows up and asks him what he thought of the report. In the book, Triva had the idea of what if he's not happy with it? What if he doesn't feel right? What if he's not going to sleep another night in his life without thinking, maybe I went too far, maybe I should have just let it go? And it was just like, how could I have never thought of that? You know, it was a genius idea because it really, the end had a softness about it with the final moment of the puppy coming in that we were really struggling with. Because the thing that's so great about the book is that it's not clean, but yet the ending was a little too clean, and Triva just came in and poked it in the eye, you know, and it was fantastic. He brought this whole new sensibility to it that was great.
It was great. You got accepted into Sundance. You guys finished, which is amazing. It came out great. Give us briefly, before I open it up to the crowd, what was your most surreal moment at Sundance? Because it was obviously your first time as a writer at Sundance.
Walking down the street and seeing actors, really famous actors, without makeup, bundled up, wishing they were back in Los Angeles. It's weird. You're in this mountain town, you know, and I remember the first morning, I got up at 5 o'clock and I walked through the snow just to get that, like, morning on Main Street, you know, get a nice hot cup of Joe, stand in the middle of the road, and breathe it in. You know, and I'm doing that, and Kevin Spacey walks by, and he's like, "It's fucking cold." And it was like, pop, there it goes. You know, it was, the whole thing was surreal, but you know, it was pretty amazing just to be there, because this was a project that, again, we never thought it would ever get finished, and it had already, like, been shot in the head a few times along the way, and then we just were like, it's over, it's done, don't even bother, and don't even bury it, just leave it there on the ground, and you know, and then we got Sundance, you know, so it was really, really just sort of an amazing experience for everybody.
You had an executive producer credit. You know, what was it like to go through the process of selling a film at Sundance? This year was definitely a different year for the film market, in which just across the board, a lot of films sold for a lot lower than was expected. What were some of the things that you kind of saw as you guys were trying to sell this?
Well, we wish we were Hamlet too. You know,
$1 million sale. Right?
Yeah. You know, I think we saw what we expected, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that we hoped that people would see something in the movie that was different and that was unique. And I think that happened. And I think we knew that distributors would be really concerned about the saleability of the film. Because is it a thriller? Not really. You know, is it a mystery? Not really. Is it a horror film? Well, if you're Ludlow, yeah. Not really. You know, so it was a tweener in terms of genre. You know, I think we knew it was going to be an uphill battle. And we were actually surprised. There was a fair amount of interest that I think shocked everybody.
It played really well on all the screens, so
yeah, we were really happy. You know, and they held out for a theatrical. I think that the producers wisely said, you know, everybody's put so much work into this, and Cox did such an incredible job that we're going to hold out for an offer that has a theatrical component. And it took 4 months, I think, of negotiating, and we finally got one.
Through Magnolia, because it didn't sell Sundance. I mean, what could you tell me about the release? Because there's been a lot of people that are interested in it, because a lot of people these days with new media are trying out new ways of delivering films to audiences. Yeah. This went on pay-per-view, was it?
Pay-per-view.
And HD TV first.
Yeah.
And then it's hitting theaters. And then it's months later DVD, or what is it?
I don't know how many months, although I've heard October 26th, but it's a new distribution thing that they're exploring. Companies like Magnolia, smaller companies, where they release a video on demand first, like a week before the theatrical, and it's sort of a way of getting free advertising. Well, not free advertising, but more people. There's an awareness that people can get of the film.
So because word of mouth, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like you go on your TV and you say, hey, let's look at pay-per-view this month. You know, and then it's like, hello, I'm Brian Cox. I hope you would come see my movie Red. Press play now. You know, because otherwise, people. I mean, Magnolia wasn't going to buy commercials on NBC. You know, between American Idol and whose puppy is it anyway? You know, so it's like, how do you reach people? And it's an interesting model because there were a lot of people who were able to see the movie. It was surreal though to have people say, hey, I saw your movie, you know, on TV last night. And we're like, it's coming out in theaters tomorrow. Yeah. But it was helpful, you know, because it opened on one screen in New York, one screen in Baltimore, and then it's coming out to LA, I think the end of August, I think Labor Day weekend. I think it's playing at the Music Hall.
Yeah, that's right. What does Keshin think of the movie?
Yeah, I was nervous about that, because he's a tough motherfucker. I think throughout the whole process, like, my greatest wish, like, the only person I was truly concerned about that I wanted to like it was Jack. And he was at Sundance. I never met him. And I went up to him after the screening, after the premiere, and I said, "Hey, I'm the writer." He's like, yeah, you made it so that they didn't fun." I was like, "I know." I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "You guys nailed it." And it was just like, it was such a great feeling because, the last thing you want to do is have the guy whose story it is, just say, "Man, you fucked it up. I'm going to go get drunk and go home." So I was really elated by the fact that he liked it.
Tough question before we open to the crowd. This is a very tough balancing act between being a Lifetime movie or kind of an interesting drama like it was. Talk about some of the things you did to counter that. Because, the minute you get dogs and dog lovers with anything, you can hear that music in your head. You guys did not get there, but it would have been really scary because I could see how easily it could have become that.
Yeah, it's funny because when you talk about the music, there's moments where the music is very creepy, right. And then there's moments where it's very kind of Hallmark. So I get wobbles, you know what I mean?
But I'm actually talking on the page.
Well, I think that all we had to do was just kind of keep it true, and not have, like you said, not build in artifice, not have these kids be tweakers, and not have, they got in a car accident and that's why they always wanted to get that A logo. Just to keep it authentic and genuine so that it's really muddy and it's unpredictable. And even at the end, you kind of don't know what you think about the whole thing. You don't know if you did the right thing or the wrong thing. And that was really
sad either, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think so.
His reaction is, "I killed 2 kids. It wasn't self-defense."
Yeah, and he's going to be haunted by that for the rest of his life. But, it's funny.
Now he has a new puppy.
The ending is the thing that I've personally taken a lot of shit for, even though it's actually in the book. That it's too glossy, it's too happy of an ending. And I strongly disagree. I'll give you my theory, and then we can do questions. The 5 steps of 5 stages of grief.
No.
Where it's like acceptance, or before acceptance is the last stage, but it's like denial. Yes, thank you. Who's smarter than me? Depression, denial, anger, acceptance. Yeah, thank you. Bargaining. That's the thing.
I just kind of punch my fist through a wall sometimes, and that settles it. Go on.
That's bargaining. Yeah. Acceptance is the last stage, and I've always felt that there's a missing step that beyond acceptance, which is that I feel like this is ridiculous and philosophical, and please excuse me and edit it out of the podcast if you like, but
definitely won't. Go on.
Thank you. that it's not until you open yourself up to the same sort of hurt again that you've truly recovered. It's not just finally acceptance, it's opening yourself up to hurt again. And I always felt like the ending might seem too soft, but at the same time, I wouldn't feel like Ludlow turned a corner, finally, if he didn't get another dog and be prepared for that dog to die again and lose another dog. And that's why we decided to keep it, because as I felt like that was the final sort of beat that told you that maybe he's going to be okay. For as haunted as he's going to be for this experience, and it certainly didn't help with his wife or his kids, at least there's some sign that maybe he's coming out of the darkness of the last 13 or 14 years.
Speaking of his kids, was there everything more about the son that lit the wife and the kid on fire?
Yeah, there was more in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incarcerated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
All right, his dad was in the book, and actually at the end of the book he was dying of cancer. And that I felt was a little too much.
Yeah, totally away from the narrative path. All right, questions from the crowd. Question was in regards to, in the script, Ave shot and killed McCormick, but in the film, McCormick lives, because he's mentioned his
There were different versions of who lived and who died. There might have been a version where he killed McCormick. Honestly, I don't recall. And I think what we sort of tried to do at the end of the day was make it a little unclear. In fact, I think what we tried to make clear comes across as a little unclear, though, which is that McCormick actually killed one of his sons. It almost feels a little too...
I got that. Yeah. They were sitting right next to each other.
Yeah,
so.
there were a bunch of different versions of what happens at the end, and it's funny, it's kind of an awkward moment, and that's something I sort of liked about it, though, is because it kind of feels like that's the way it would really go down. It's not going to be like slow motion, You know, like people shuffling cliffs and diving through the air in slow motion. It would be people shooting at each other in the dark and killing their sons. Like that's, you know, that kind of felt like that's the way it would go.
Another question from the crowd. Amanda Plummer was great in the movie. Was there ever more with her and that family with Freddy Krueger? Sorry, I keep saying
there wasn't. No, there really wasn't actually. In the book, it was
a name person. I thought maybe there was something.
Yeah, you know, that was something we were really blessed by. That we had these incredible actors to come and play these couple scene parts. I mean, Sizemore was only really in sort of 3 sequences of the film, you know, and Amanda and Robert Englund, who is unbelievable. I was in a van with him at Sundance, and going from one place to the other, and he spent the whole time talking about Italian opera. The guy's just like the smartest guy in the world, and then we pulled up, and there was a crowd of people outside waiting, and he gave me this mischievous smile, and then he opened the door and went,
I just want to
like,
say,
man, the man is so good. Like, he doesn't know.
I just want to say what a brilliant job everybody did, and I'm glad it came back to life.
Thank you. I'm glad too. I mean, just really exceptional cast, and for Brian to come back and for everybody to come back. I mean, it was a lot to ask and to work for, you know, well below what they were and should get
It
paid.
ended up being a very cohesive whole.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
One or two more questions right here, you in the blue. Curious about you being brought back in. Were you involved in the editing process, or were there any specific challenges that you want to talk about, aside from cutting out the sex scene, which we covered?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple cuts. I wasn't honestly that involved in the cut. It was just, I saw a couple cuts and I gave my opinion on a few things, and that was really it. I mean, the balancing acts were more about kind of trying to figure out what scenes to hold on to. Like I said, there were a lot of scenes that felt plotty at the end of the day. And then even with all the work that we'd done, looking at the existing footage to plan the new shoot, when the new footage came in, there were still moments that were a little bumpy that we had to sort of track. You know, the sex scene being one of them was really bumpy. No, that's not a pun. No, I mean, again, I wasn't that involved in the editing, so.
You, sir, right there. What are you working on next? I mean, I know a few places we could start. Obviously, I know Zero Dark 30 is a script you've written. A loose remake of sorts would be one way to describe it, but not really.
Yeah, it's Bob Clark. Bob Clark fans. Yeah, he made a film. Yeah, God bless his soul. He made a film in 1974 that had about 25 different titles depending on where it was released. But it was an independent film called Death Dream. Is what it is on DVD, and it's about a soldier who dies in Vietnam, and his parents, who live in like any town in America, are informed, and they have a burial in town, and it's devastating to this town. And then one morning the sun comes up, and he walks back into town. And there's something really, really wrong with him. And it's sort of a dark fable about war. And my producing partner and I, kind of following off of Red and the frustration, but also the liberty of being able to control something so tightly, we went and we bought all the rights. And we're now in year 3.5 of that movie. So you'll be able to see it in about 2 years. We had it up, we had it down, it fell apart a couple times. We've got Michael Douglas producing with us now, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, wait, I remember this because we were planning something and you were like, no, I gotta go to New Mexico, we're gonna be shooting. And then,
Yeah,
did you get out there and like?
Yeah, the day we were moving to New Mexico for 3 months, all the money disappeared. It fell out. Ours, I don't want to belabor this, but ours was the third movie in a 3-movie package, and the first 2 movies were run so far over budget that they started to amortize the losses against our film. And we were lucky because we were able to say, give us the movie back. We'd rather get the movie back instead of ruin it and make it for $1.6 million instead of $3.2. But I rented 2 houses in New Mexico, so I went out there and finished another script. And, but anyway, so Zero Dark 30 we're getting closer on, which is good. And I've got a TV series, Flatliners. Any Flatliners fans here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, turned that into a TV series that we're trying to get off the ground, which if we could pull it off, it'd be pretty damn cool. And in a couple months, we're going to start shooting a stoner comedy.
What's the title?
It's called High School. And it's about, yes, this one's fun. I was writing all these dark things, and my producing partner's like, let's write something fun. I was like, fun? What is this fun? And
Well, your partner is Josh Stolberg.
John Stolberg, yeah.
Did I say Josh?
You did, that's right. Isn't Josh Stolberg the guy that created OC?
Different right.
Okay. Yeah, John Stolberg Jr. Just my producing partner, yeah. And he, and we wrote this script just for fun about these two kids who were best friends growing up, and then they kind of hit 10, and they hit junior high school, and they went different directions, and now it's the last week of school, and they're both seniors, and one of them is the school stoner, and the other kid is the valedictorian. He was sort of, due to a family situation, he was forced to kind of be a man, and he's like the type A, valedictorian, scholarship to MIT. Even then, he's still trying to bust ass on his finals. And they meet up kind of on a rare occurrence, and they haven't talked to each other in years, so they go to the tree house where they used to hang out when they were kids, and they start going through their old shit, and they're like, why don't we stop being friends? And they're like, no, high school, And the stoner kid starts smoking up, and he realizes his friend has never gotten high, because he's very much like. So he says, come on, there's 3 days left of school, you've got your valedictorian, you've got all this stuff, get high. So the kid finally acquiesces, he gets high, has a tough night, and then the next day in school they find out there's going to be a surprise drug test. So this kid's future, because he got high once, is completely fucked. He's going to lose everything. And they have 20 hours, they don't know what to do. Because you can't get clean, or so I'm told. So his stoner friend hits on an idea. He remembers that the next day, which is the second to last day of school, there's always an annual bake sale that the PTA moms do to raise money for the band. And he says, what if we got the whole school high and we replaced the brownies with pop brownies? So they do that. They stay up all night and they swap the brownies in the morning and proceed to get the entire school, the principal, the faculty, the teachers, the students completely baked. So it's fun. It's kind of like no, it's not going to be a Disney film. No, we're doing it with Warren Zide, who produced American Pie, and man, it's going to be fun. Yeah, so it's kind of like a Ferris Bueller's Day Off stoner comedy.
Was there ever still a White project, to my memory, that...
Oh, yeah, White's a movie that I'm going to direct, yeah.
Give us the pitch on that.
Well, it's kind of a Kubrick meets M. Night Shyamalan, but far more poorly directed, scary movie about a bunch of people who were weekending in a manor house in New Hampshire on July 4th, and they go to bed and it's like 100 degrees out, and they wake up the next morning and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, and it's -10, and there's no television, there's no cable, there's no satellite, there's no cell phone, there's no phone. The town in the valley below, where everybody has a generator, is pitch black at night. The night before there was a full moon, now there's no moon. So they suddenly find themselves in a situation where something very, very bad has happened to the world and they have no way of finding out what it is.
Was it a happening? Sorry, I didn't know that part. Sorry. Little inmates, you brought it up, man. Alright, one or two last questions. You, sir, is there a fear of piracy with straight pay-per-view? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think the people who are going to make money off it are probably terrified about it. Piracy is a huge problem, obviously. But I think that the size of the film, who's going to pirate Red? You know what I mean? People are going to pirate Batman. Like that's, I think that they're just sort of like, if someone pirates Red, then good for us because more people are going to watch it. I don't think there's a fear that ours is like the #1 BitTorrent download of the week. You know what I mean? I'd be delighted if it was. And if you're listening, download Red at StephenSusco.com.
Terrifying. All right. You, sir, right there in the blue. Last question. Could you talk more about the first director? What kind of issues were there in those final days, as you had to kind of let the project go?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have not talked to him. I don't know. And I kind of...
Has he seen the film?
He has seen the film.
Do you know what he thought of it?
No, I haven't talked to him. I kind of didn't want to until the movie was released because I wasn't around for it, and Brian was very distraught, and the producers were very distraught, and the second director was very distraught, and I was very distraught, because the whole movie happened because Lucky and I both wanted to make this happen. So not having sort of a first-hand view of what actually went down, I kind of just wanted to not just be out of the loop entirely, because it's weird to say it, but it's not my business. You know what I mean? All I know is that Lucky is a fucking unbelievably talented director, and Treatwood Decent is a fucking unbelievably talented director, and this movie is what it is because of both of them.
Cool. But what about the movie within the movie, Burrow Boy, playing in the theater?
I have no idea what Burrow Boy is. I have no idea. Has anybody seen this movie?
I just had to ask Lucky. It's on the marquee.
I think it's, well, that's like my first question. When I talk to Lucky, it's going to be, what's the good movie? And then, what the fuck is Burrow Boy? And where can I get it? Like, where can I see the full version of Burrow Boy?
I guess the only place in small towns you can kill dogs. You've been very generous with your time. Give it up again for Stephen Susco.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to Stephen Susco for being so generous with his time. And if you miss Red in theaters, of course, you could check it out on DVD. I believe it streets October 28th, 2008. So you could check it out on DVD. And as for that sound failure, once again, sorry, Susco. It wasn't my fault, I swear. If you dug this episode of the podcast in general, consider tossing a virtual tip into our PayPal virtual tip jar by visiting www.creativescreenwritingmagazine.blogspot.com and look for the PayPal icon. Your tips are appreciated and definitely help out with equipment, hard drives, and all the other stuff we need to keep this podcast running. Of course, feel free to check out my blog, which I even managed to update on the rare occasion that I have time to do so by visiting www.jeffgoldsmith.blogspot.com. You can also always feel free to drop me a line by emailing me at yo.goldsmith@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, don't forget to click that subscribe button in iTunes or your podcatching software, because that's how episodes are downloaded automatically every time you click refresh. And if you have a minute, feel free to leave us positive feedback in the iTunes Music Store or at podcastalley.com. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, Senior Editor for Creative Screenwriting Magazine, thanking you again for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.